There's a silent strength that radiates from those who refuse to be rattled by life's daily turbulence, not because they live in a bubble free of hardship, but because they've trained themselves to respond, not react. In a world that thrives on reaction, where everyone is quick to anger, quick to defend, and even quicker to fall apart at the smallest inconvenience, the person who remains calm becomes magnetic. That calm is not passive, it's a learned discipline, a chosen mindset. The nothing bothers me mindset doesn't mean you feel nothing. It means you've taken the time to master what you do with those feelings. The goal isn't to become numb, but to become sovereign over your internal state, so outside forces no longer determine your peace. When life throws its usual chaos, rude comments, long delays, broken plans, you stand in the storm like a mountain unmoved. The world will always test you. People will gossip. Plans will fail. Opportunities will fall through. But none of these are the real enemy. Your reaction to them is when you allow circumstances to hijack your emotions, you hand over the keys to your kingdom. You let others drive your mood, your focus, and ultimately your life. This is why those who remain steady in chaos possess a quiet authority. They move with assurance not because they're immune to pressure, but because they've chosen not to be enslaved by it. Look around at the people who hold real power, not necessarily titles or status, but influence, presence. You'll notice something. They don't chase arguments, they don't explode over trivial things, and they certainly don't explain themselves to anyone and everyone. They have learned the rare art of not giving their energy away recklessly. That kind of calm doesn't come from privilege, it comes from mastery. These individuals have worked on their mental reflexes. Instead of reacting to every stimulus like the rest of the world, they pause, they ask, is this worth my peace? Most of the time, it's not. Let's take a familiar example. Picture someone throwing an insult at you in public. The average person feels the sting, lashes back, or retreats in silence and overthinks it for days. But you, trained in mental control, understand that the insult only has meaning if you accept it. So you smile, stay silent, and move on. That's not weakness, that's mastery. You've denied them the reaction they were fishing for, and in doing so, maintained your power. That one moment of non-reaction sends a message far louder than any comeback ever could. It says, I am untouchable. Rejection, too, becomes powerless in the hands of the emotionally trained. Where most see failure as a defining blow, the unbothered mind sees data. This didn't work. Why? What next? There's no wallowing, no identity crisis, just refinement. Emotional detachment from outcomes doesn't mean you don't care. It means you don't collapse. You learn, adjust, and continue. And over time, people begin to notice that nothing breaks your stride. This is not because you don't feel disappointment, but because you've trained yourself not to get lost in it. So how do you train this mindset? First, you practice pausing. Every time you feel that emotional surge, anger, anxiety, frustration, breathe. Don't react. Ask yourself, does this moment deserve my energy? That pause alone can save you from 100 unnecessary arguments, regrets, and wasted hours. Second, visualize the person you want to be. Poised, unshaken, powerful. See them walking through the noise of life like they're surrounded by an invisible force field. The more vividly you visualize this version of yourself, the more real they become. Over time, you become them, not by force, but by intention. The power of indifference isn't about not caring. It's about caring strategically. It's about choosing where your attention and energy go with the precision of a warrior selecting his battles. The truth is, most people are emotionally exhausted, not because life is inherently cruel, but because they react to everything. Every opinion, every slight, every inconvenience gets a piece of their peace. They're pulled in every direction, and by the end of the day, they've lost more ground than they've gained. But when you master emotional detachment, you reclaim your power. You no longer pour your energy into things that don't grow you. You stop bleeding energy over every bump in the road. There's a misconception that emotional control equals emotional suppression, but that couldn't be further from the truth. Emotional mastery is not the absence of feeling, it's the presence of awareness. You feel everything, but you are ruled by nothing. You observe your anger, but you don't act on it. You witness your anxiety, but you don't let it control your decisions. This is the level of mental clarity that separates those who are merely surviving from those who are intentionally designing their lives. The difference lies in whether you allow emotions to steer the wheel or use them as signals to adjust your direction. Imagine yourself in a tense confrontation. You've been insulted, misjudged, maybe even humiliated. Your instincts scream for a reaction to defend, retaliate, or explain. But then something clicks. You realize this moment is a test. And instead of reacting, you breathe. You stand still, say nothing, and let your presence do the talking. The other person grows uncomfortable. They expected you to lose control. Instead, you stayed centered. This is power. This is what it means to be untouchable, not because you didn't feel the insult, but because you didn't let it own you. Now think about the time you wasted obsessing over what someone said, did, or thought about you. You replayed the situation in your mind for days, maybe weeks. But in the end, did it matter? Did it improve your life? Probably not. What it did do, however, was drain your mental energy. Emotional detachment teaches you to stop investing in that kind of waste. When something happens, you evaluate it logically. You ask, does this affect my purpose? Does this shift the trajectory of my goals? If the answer is no, you let it go. That mental filter alone will eliminate 90% of the stress that people carry daily. Purpose is your anchor in the sea of emotional storms. When you have a clear vision, a reason for waking up every day with discipline and directions, small things can't shake you. You don't have time to engage in petty drama or emotional outbursts. Your goals are too important, your time too valuable, your energy too sacred. This clarity creates resilience. The stronger your vision, the stronger your armor. Emotional distractions begin to look like what they are, irrelevant noise. So begin to train yourself with small acts of discipline. Next time someone cuts you off in traffic, let it go. When someone interrupts you, stay calm. When your plans fall through, adjust without complaining. These moments are your mental gym. Every act of non-reaction is a repetition, strengthening your control. Over time, your tolerance for nonsense grows. Your ability to maintain peace in chaos becomes second nature. You stop needing to be understood, validated, or justified because you found something far more valuable, inner command. That's where the real transformation begins. Not in changing the world, but in mastering the mind that perceives it. To live with unshakable confidence is not to become emotionless. It is to become emotionally intelligent. The world will always present reasons to lose your cool, to react impulsively, or to spiral into anxiety. But the man or woman who learns to sit with their emotions without letting them dictate their behavior becomes a force of nature. Emotions are messengers, not masters. They're meant to be acknowledged, not obeyed. The problem is most people never learn this distinction. They assume that feeling something is reason enough to act on it. And so they live their lives on a roller coaster, yanked around by every emotional wave. There's something deeply empowering about noticing your anger rise and doing nothing, not because you're afraid to speak, but because you've mastered the pause. You've cultivated the ability to hold space for the emotion without needing to perform for it. This is the hallmark of inner strength. The ability to feel deeply and still choose your response. It's what separates the impulsive from the intentional, the fragile from the formidable. Imagine being in a disagreement and not feeling the need to raise your voice. You're not suppressing anything, you're simply in control. You are the captain of your ship, and nothing inside or outside of you gets to steer without your permission. Let's explore failure. Most people collapse under the weight of disappointment. When their goals don't go as planned, they take it personally. They internalize setbacks as evidence of inadequacy. But the emotionally sovereign mind sees failure for what it is. Information, not a sentence, not a curse, just data. It doesn't say you're not good enough. It says, this approach didn't work. That subtle difference makes all the difference. Emotionally reactive people wallow in shame. Emotionally mature people adapt. They don't waste time grieving over what could have been. They re-strategize and execute again. Building this mindset begins with awareness. When you're hit with an emotion, label it. This is frustration. This is fear. This is embarrassment. And once it's named, examine it. Why do I feel this? Is it valid? Is it useful? This self-inquiry turns unconscious reactions into conscious choices. The more you do this, the more distance you create between stimulus and response. That gap is where your power lives, because in that space, you're no longer a puppet to emotions. You're a sovereign being, choosing with intention. And that right there is liberation. Purpose continues to play a vital role. When your life has direction, the small irritations and emotional jolts don't carry the same weight. A person with no clear aim can be derailed by a bad comment, a missed opportunity, or a misunderstanding. But someone fueled by vision can't be moved by minor noise. Their focus is too fierce. Their mission is too personal. So if you want to be emotionally resilient, get clear on your purpose. The stronger your why, the quieter the world becomes. Finally, remember this. Emotions are temporary visitors, not permanent residents. They rise, they pass. Your job is not to evict them harshly, nor to let them run your house. Your job is to notice, to listen, and then to decide. Because once you realize that every emotion is just a suggestion, not a command, you become the master of your experience. You stop being a prisoner of your reactions and begin living as the architect of your inner world. And that kind of power, it's rare, it's real, and it's yours to build. Pressure reveals the truth about us. In calm waters, anyone can appear composed, but when the tide rises and the winds turn violent, that's when you see who's truly prepared. Most people crumble under pressure because they've never trained their minds for resistance. They expect smooth sailing, and when life inevitably delivers the storm, they panic. But those who rise in high-stakes moments aren't lucky, they're disciplined. They've rehearsed chaos in their minds. They've faced adversity and chosen not to break. Pressure doesn't weaken them, it sharpens them. They don't fear intensity, they welcome it, knowing it's the proving ground of greatness. The key to staying composed isn't avoiding stress, it's changing your relationship with it. Stop seeing pressure as a threat and start viewing it as an invitation to expand, to level up, to rise. Imagine being in a high-stakes meeting, a deal on the line, tension thick in the air, everyone's nerves are spiking, voices rising, but you're still, not because the situation isn't intense, but because you've trained for this, while others let the moment take control of them. You remain focused, grounded, and precise. That kind of calm doesn't just impress others, it gives you a massive advantage. Because the person who remains calm has the clearest vision. Training for pressure starts long before the pressure arrives. It begins in the mundane moments, when your plans get interrupted, when your schedule falls apart, when someone disrespects you. Instead of reacting, you observe. You practice your pause. You analyze your emotional urge and choose differently. These micro decisions build your tolerance. It's not about perfection, it's about preparation. So when the big test arrives, when life throws a crisis your way, you're not shocked, you're not scrambling, you're centered, because you've already been here in your mind 1,000 times. The warrior mentality is not forged in theory, it's earned through hardship. A warrior does not expect peace. He expects resistance, and because of that, nothing surprises him. He moves through uncertainty with clarity. He expects betrayal, failure, and setbacks, not with cynicism, but with readiness. You must approach life the same way. Expect people to let you down. Expect moments to fall apart. And when they do, don't collapse. Pivot, strategize. Keep your composure, because the real power lies not in controlling the storm, but in refusing to be moved by it. Another essential aspect of remaining calm is letting go of the illusion of control. Most anxiety is born from the desperate need to control everything, the timing, the outcome, the response, but control is limited. You can't always predict what others will do. You can't force the world to bend to your plan, but you can control how you respond. You can train your mind to stay rational, no matter how emotional the situation appears. That's not denial. That's discipline. The disciplined mind sees through the fog and chooses presence over panic. So next time life presses down on you, financial stress, heartbreak, uncertainty, remind yourself this is your training ground. You don't need everything to go perfectly. You don't need ideal conditions. What you need is composure, because if you can keep your mind clear while others drown in confusion, you win. Every time. Pressure will come. Let it come. You are no longer afraid. You are no longer breakable. You've built a mind that thrives in the fire, and now you know. This is your advantage. So much of our suffering stems not from what happens to us, but from our refusal to let go of it. We grip tightly to outcomes, expectations, and illusions of control, hoping to bend life into a shape we can predict. But life doesn't work that way. The more you try to force things, the more fragile you become. True power comes from release, not resistance. It comes from recognizing the limits of your control and learning to surrender the rest. Letting go is not weakness, it's wisdom. The wise don't cling, they flow. They do not attach their identity to fleeting moments. They understand that inner peace begins where control ends. Imagine trying to hold water in your hand. The tighter you squeeze, the faster it escapes. Life works the same way. When you obsess over keeping things exactly as you want, people, plans, outcomes, you end up exhausted, anxious, and ultimately disappointed. But when you trust the flow, when you stop demanding that life meet every expectation, you gain something far greater than control: freedom. You stop wasting energy on what you can't change. You redirect your focus toward what you can build, shape, and influence. That's real strength, not the ability to dominate the world, but the ability to remain unmoved when it refuses to bend. This doesn't mean apathy or indifference. It means emotional discipline. It means caring deeply, but not being destroyed when things fall apart. It means giving your best, then releasing attachment to the result. Because the truth is, outcomes don't define you. How you handle them does. You can face rejection and still walk tall. You can lose what you thought you needed and still rise stronger. The storm may come, but you don't drown in it. You learn to float, to navigate, to evolve. Letting go is about adaptability. It's about choosing peace over perfection. There is a quiet invincibility in the one who accepts what is. While others are trapped in the cycle of what should have been, the emotionally detached person sees things clearly. They do not demand life be fair or people be flawless. They observe reality without judgment, and that clarity allows them to move forward faster. They waste no time mourning illusions. Instead, they adjust course. That is why letting go is the ultimate form of intelligence. It's the refusal to be imprisoned by things outside of your control. It's choosing progress over pity, movement over misery. Start practicing this today. When plans change, let them. When people walk away, let them. When an opportunity slips through your fingers, let it go. Ask yourself, is clinging helping me or hurting me? If it's stealing your peace, it's time to release it. Emotional detachment doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care enough about your inner world to stop letting outer chaos ruin it. And that's a kind of strength most people never learn. Letting go is a daily practice. It starts with the small things: traffic delays, last-minute cancellations, a rude comment. Each time you choose not to react, you reinforce your control. And over time, you start letting go of bigger things too. Old wounds, outdated dreams, toxic relationships. You begin to move lighter, clearer, faster. And in that space of freedom, a new kind of life begins to unfold. One where you are no longer a slave to control, but a master of flow. Silence isn't emptiness, it's strength. In a world addicted to noise, the person who can stay quiet becomes powerful by default. Most people talk to fill space, to defend themselves, or to be noticed, but real power doesn't chase attention. It creates presence. Silence is not passive, it's a strategic tool. When used wisely, it shifts dynamics, commands respect, and confuses the people who seek to provoke you. The louder the world becomes, the more magnetic silence becomes. Because while words reveal your intentions, silence protects them. While others try to prove their worth through speech, you prove yours through restraint. Think of any interaction, an argument, a negotiation, a confrontation. The one who speaks less always holds more leverage. Why? Because silence unsettles. It creates mystery. It forces people to wonder what you're thinking, to second-guess themselves, to reveal more than they should. When you stay quiet in moments of tension, you control the frame. You take away the emotional oxygen from the room. The person expecting a reaction starts to squirm. They over-explain, they panic, but you observe. You calculate, you remain still, and in that stillness you dominate the moment. Consider the next time someone insults you. The reflex is to snap back. Defend yourself, explain your worth. But what if you did nothing? No words, no reaction, just a calm, focused presence. You'd be surprised how unsettling that is. The attacker expected emotional fuel to burn their fire, and you gave them none. Your silence becomes a mirror, reflecting their own insecurity back at them. Silence in that moment is not weakness, it's psychological warfare. It tells the world, I do not need to engage with noise to prove my strength. And that's a message people don't forget. Silence is also the most underrated observational tool you have. When you speak less, you see more. You catch the flicker of hesitation in someone's voice, the subtle tension in their body language, the inconsistency in their story. These are signals that emotional talkers often miss, but the quiet observer reads the room with precision. They gather intel while revealing nothing. This is how you gain power without ever raising your voice. People start to pay attention not just when you speak, but when you don't. Because when you finally do speak, it means something. But cultivating silence takes discipline. We're conditioned to fill space, to be agreeable, to avoid awkwardness. Silence feels risky. It feels vulnerable. But that's exactly what makes it powerful. When you become comfortable with quiet, you become unshakable. You're no longer performing for approval. You don't need to be heard to feel valuable. You know your worth, and that self-assurance radiates louder than any speech. In a world full of noise, the calmest person becomes the most captivating. So start practicing today. Don't over-explain, don't justify, don't react to every provocation. Let people wonder, let them fill in the blanks. Hold back when it's tempting to talk. Speak with precision, not desperation. And when necessary, let your silence be the loudest message in the room. Because the one who can remain quiet while others lose their composure is the one who truly holds the power. Your mind is your fortress or your prison. The difference depends on how you train it. Most people let their minds run wild, unguarded, and undisciplined. They let thoughts enter without challenge, emotions dictate without pause, and doubt fester without resistance. But if you want to be unbothered, truly untouchable, then mental strength must become your daily mission. You don't wait until life breaks you to decide to become strong. You build strength beforehand. Just like the body, the mind grows through resistance, and the more you train it, the less control the outside world has over you. Mental toughness isn't about being born different. It's about building different habits. Wake up with intention. Before the world grabs your attention, take control of it. Start with silence, stillness, or reflection. Review your mission, your values, your non-negotiables. The mind craves structure, and when you give it one, you no longer start your day on defense. Instead, you operate from a place of clarity. You aren't just reacting, you're directing. Most people live in emotional autopilot. They feel something and act on it without questioning. But when you train your mind to pause, to question, to filter, everything changes. You move from impulse to intention. There will always be moments that tempt you to break character. A rude comment, a missed opportunity, a wave of self-doubt. But these aren't threats, they're opportunities. Every emotional trigger is a rip in the mental gym. And just like lifting weights, it's not the comfortable reps that make you stronger. It's the heavy ones. So when life throws you discomfort, don't flinch. Welcome it, observe it, use it. Say to yourself, this is training. When you embrace life as mental training, every difficulty becomes a stepping stone. You stop fearing the chaos because you've built a mind that thrives within it. One of the most essential habits for an unshakable mind is detachment. This doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop depending. You care deeply, but you don't crumble if things don't go your way. You love fully, but you don't lose yourself if someone leaves. You give your best, but you don't tie your worth to the outcome. Detachment allows you to stay grounded no matter what happens externally, and that grounding is your anchor in the storm. It's what keeps your mind from spiraling into anxiety, frustration, or rage. The detached mind is not emotionless. It's emotionally sovereign. Discipline is another pillar. Your mind will always seek the easy path. It wants to scroll instead of study, sleep instead of show up, quit instead of push through. Discipline is what overrides that impulse. It's what separates average from elite. And the more disciplined your mind becomes, the more unstoppable you become. It starts small, keeping your word to yourself, finishing what you start, doing hard things, even when motivation fades. These small wins compound. They form the identity of someone who is in control. And control, in this sense, isn't rigidity, it's freedom. You are free because you no longer depend on fleeting emotions to take action. So, commit. Make your mind your number one project. Meditate, journal, sit in silence, face discomfort intentionally. Do not wait for life to break you to start building your strength. Build it now, because when the chaos arrives, and it will, you won't need to fake composure. You'll have it. You won't need to act strong. You'll be strong. And that kind of strength doesn't shout. It doesn't need applause. It simply shows up every day, quietly prepared to rise no matter what comes. The chase for approval is one of the most draining pursuits a person can engage in. It's a quiet addiction, subtle but powerful. And like all addictions, it steals your freedom. The moment you base your worth on someone else's opinion is the moment you surrender control of your life. Seeking validation feels natural at first. We're social beings, wired to belong, but when approval becomes your oxygen, you're no longer breathing for yourself. You're suffocating beneath the weight of everyone else's expectations. If you want to be mentally invincible, you must break this cycle. You must learn to validate yourself, because waiting for the world to do it will keep you waiting forever. Look closely at the people you admire, the truly powerful, magnetic ones. You'll notice a theme. They don't seek permission. They don't dilute themselves for acceptance. They live from a deep sense of self-knowing. And because of that, they draw respect effortlessly. When you need approval, you shrink. You play safe. You avoid judgment. But when you're anchored in self-acceptance, you walk with boldness. You're not trying to impress anyone. You're simply expressing your truth. And that kind of confidence can't be faked. It's built, it's earned. It's developed through the decision to trust yourself, even when others don't. Criticism becomes irrelevant when you're no longer performing for the crowd. You don't need to defend every choice, explain every belief, or prove every move. You're not cold. You're just clear. Clear about who you are, what matters to you, and what doesn't deserve your energy. Validation seeking is exhausting because it never ends. Someone will always disapprove. Someone will always misinterpret. You could live perfectly and still be misunderstood. So stop aiming to please. Instead, aim to align with your values, your vision, and your own sense of worth. The ones who truly belong in your life will respect you for it. The rest, let them go. You must understand this truth. Most of the criticism you fear comes from people who don't even know themselves. They judge from their own insecurity, not from insight. Their opinions are projections, not facts. And yet, we allow them to shape our identity. Why? Because we haven't fully owned it ourselves. The moment you choose to define yourself without apology, you remove their power. Their disapproval no longer derails you. Their silence no longer hurts you. You've stopped outsourcing your worth, and that changes everything. Start by creating your own internal scoreboard. Celebrate your own wins. Recognize your own growth. You don't need a standing ovation to feel proud. You need presence, a moment of reflection, a moment of stillness where you acknowledge, I'm showing up, I'm growing, I'm on my path. That inner validation is what keeps you grounded when the world turns on you. It's what keeps your fire burning when no one else is watching, because sometimes they won't applaud. Sometimes they'll criticize. And sometimes they'll say nothing at all. But when you've built your worth from within, none of that can shake you. This is the paradox of true self-respect. When you no longer seek validation, you attract more of it. Not because you need it, but because people are drawn to authenticity. They're drawn to the rare energy of someone who doesn't flinch in the face of disapproval, someone who stands tall even when they stand alone. You become magnetic, not by being agreeable, but by being real. And when that shift happens, you'll realize the approval you were chasing never mattered, because the only validation that holds weight is the kind you give yourself. Criticism is inevitable, but it's how you process it that defines your strength. Most people either internalize it or fight it, allowing it to control their emotions and behavior. But both of these reactions miss the point. Criticism in its rawest form is just noise. Some of it is useful, most of it isn't. The challenge is learning to filter the two with clarity and control. When you give every comment the power to shape your identity, you become a puppet pulled by invisible strings. But when you listen strategically, calmly, and with discernment, you gain insight without giving up control. That's emotional intelligence. That's power. There are two kinds of criticism you'll face. The first is constructive, the kind that comes from people who want to see you grow, who've walked the path and offer insights from experience. This feedback is gold, but most people ignore it because it feels uncomfortable. The second kind is destructive. Criticism born from jealousy, misunderstanding, or insecurity. This is the most common, and it's also the most dangerous if you're not careful. It disguises itself as truth, but it's just noise. It's not meant to help you rise. It's meant to bring you down. The trick is learning how to recognize the difference and never confuse one for the other. Picture yourself as a sculptor working on a masterpiece. Every stroke of the chisel matters, but not every voice in the crowd matters. Some are experts offering genuine advice. Others are hecklers shouting nonsense. The wise artist keeps building. He doesn't stop to debate with fools. He doesn't abandon his vision because someone mocked it. He stays focused on the work. That's how you must treat your life. Your goals, your growth, your evolution, it's your sculpture. Don't pause progress for every passerby who has something to say. Stay locked in on the vision. That's how greatness is forged. One of the most empowering questions you can ask when facing criticism is this: does this person have the experience, the insight, or the results I want? If not, why absorb their feedback? You wouldn't take financial advice from someone broke, so why let someone unqualified shape your mindset? Most criticism comes from people who've never done what you're doing. They're reacting from their own fears. Don't let that dictate your direction. Instead, thank them silently, filter the words, and move forward. You don't owe anyone an explanation. You owe yourself progress. But what if the criticism hurts anyway? That's normal. You're human. It's okay to feel the sting, but it's not okay to dwell in it. Train yourself to pause, breathe, analyze. Ask, is there truth here I can use? If yes, extract it. Grow from it. If not, let it pass through you like wind through an open door. Don't close your heart. Just strengthen your filter. The goal isn't to become cold. It's to become clear. Clarity protects your energy. It allows you to remain open to growth without being torn down by noise.
Over time, this habit builds resilience. You stop flinching every time someone has an opinion. You stop seeking praise or fearing critique. You remain grounded, focused, intentional. And when people see you thriving despite the noise, they'll wonder how you do it. The truth, you mastered the art of filtering. You stopped listening to everyone and started listening to yourself. That doesn't make you arrogant. It makes you self-aware. And self-awareness, in a world full of distractions and opinions, is the ultimate superpower.
In a world addicted to broadcasting every move, silence has become a lost art. Everyone's talking about their plans, their progress, their goals, but the ones who achieve the most are usually the ones saying the least. Real power doesn't crave attention, it craves execution. When you move in silence, you conserve energy. You avoid unnecessary resistance. You build quietly, strategically, letting your results make the noise. The loudest person in the room is often the most insecure, but the quiet one, the one observing, executing, stacking, wins in private. That's the one the world will remember. Moving in silence is not about secrecy. It's about sovereignty. It means you no longer need external validation to pursue what matters. You don't need to explain your vision to people who won't understand it. You don't need permission to take bold action. You simply act. You refine. You evolve. While others are busy seeking applause for unfinished ideas, you're crafting something undeniable. And when it's ready, it speaks for itself. No introductions, no justifications, just undeniable presence. Because when you move with intention and discipline, your results eventually become impossible to ignore. Think about how much energy is lost in explaining yourself, justifying your dreams, defending your process, arguing with people who don't get it. All of that noise distracts from the work, and the work is where the transformation happens. When you move in silence, you protect your focus, you cut off access to your process. You eliminate distractions before they even reach you. You don't need everyone's opinion, you need consistency, clarity, and commitment. The fewer people involved, the fewer opportunities for doubt to creep in. This isn't arrogance, it's strategy. Silence also grants you flexibility. When no one knows your next move, they can't sabotage it. They can't doubt it. They can't insert their fears into your path. You pivot in peace. You experiment without pressure. You grow without interference. This is how real momentum is built, not through attention, but through autonomy. And the irony is, the less you say, the more people lean in. They wonder what you're building. They sense your focus, and that mystery becomes magnetic. Your stillness becomes strength. Your quiet becomes presence. But to move in silence, you need discipline. The urge to share is strong. The ego loves recognition. But long-term power comes from restraint, from letting go of the need to be seen before you've truly arrived. If your success is real, it won't need to be announced. It will reveal itself. So hold back when you feel the need to show off. Stay quiet when you're tempted to prove something. Trust that your actions over time will say everything that needs to be said, and they will say it louder than any post, speech, or declaration ever could. So now the question is, can you be patient? Can you be disciplined enough to build in the dark until it's time to shine? Can you keep your head down while others chase attention? Because if you can, you'll rise higher than you ever imagined, not because the world watched you climb, but because you arrived so strong, so complete, so undeniable that they had no choice but to notice. That's the essence of true mastery, moving quietly, relentlessly, powerfully, until your silence becomes your legacy.